going back to the job that I was planning to go back to. But I think something in me was shifted and different, and I was, I know that, this job is probably more like a job for me for the next couple of years, a few years. But I was sort of determined to find something that I'm really passionate about. And I realized I'm the type of person who just can't be content when I'm doing something I'm not passionate about. Like, it has to be something I really like. And then that started almost like a few years of exploration. This time more inwardly compared to the gap year trip. So I think what I did was probably like the design process of just trying things out and see what works and what I like. So I went to a lot of like workshops and training events. Like a one-day introductory to journalism or creative
So
writing.
you kind of spread your eggs in so many different baskets, as opposed to say, because I think the question that I'm quite interested in is, it wasn't that, I presume it wasn't that you decided psychology was for you and you dug your heel in and you went for it. It was trying a range of different things and giving them an equal opportunity to speak to you and let them manifest.
I think I had some vague sense of what I might be suitable of and what I might be interested in. So I'm sort of interested in writing, in sort of psychology, human connections. I think that's especially from the gap year, because I realized how deep, authentic connections with people really heal me and heal others. Just having someone there, listening to people's story and actually listen to other people's story really healed me, I think, in some ways. So I think journalism was something to do with writing, but then I found that actually that might be a bit too fast paced and you need to be out there all the time, and it might actually not be suitable for me. I think I also went to something about tourism. What else? Anthropology. I was curious, so I went to some courses just to find out. Anthropology, philosophy.
Very interesting.
Yeah, it was more like it was more like a one-day course just to see what this is about. That was quite a interesting time. Yeah. It was I feel a little bit lost, but also excited and trying different things out every day. But I think in 2013 or 14, I stumbled across this course called Introduction to Jung. Yeah. And it was taught, by someone who is now my supervisor. Wow. My one-to-one personal supervisor. Anyway, so I found that course really spoke to me, and I was very fascinated about everything, was taught in that course about shadow, individuation and all that. And then I think from there, I sort of concentrated more energy and went on a few other evening workshops and classes. And then in 2015, I decided to do a counseling training. For 2 years, but that's again still personal development, something I was interested in, and then I think one thing led to another. By 2017, I decided I'm gonna give this a go. So did this more sort of professional qualified course.
Yeah, sounds like it went from sort of trying different things, and then organically it just took on the direction by itself, as opposed to artificially that you decided I have to do this. And when you encountered Jung is ridiculous. I just like, when I read his stuff, it's just everything clicks, everything makes sense, and it's just so powerful when you read his stuff. Yeah.
That's really, I would say, it's an organic process. There's nothing, obviously there's an intentional part that you want to explore something different, but more or less you give yourself the chance to explore and keep an open mind. And when you actually met the right sort of thing that you wanted to do at that moment, you have that leap of faith to jump across, the barriers. So you mentioned in the beginning that your school of thought is transpersonal psychotherapy. I guess it would be very great if you can actually explain to us what that means, and maybe give us a bit of introduction of, what are the types of, major types of psychotherapy now in the world, and just give us a little bit of a small lecture here.
Yeah, so the modality that I trained in is integrative. It's called integrative transpersonal counseling with a soulful perspective. So that's a quite a long name, but I think for me what it means is that I think ultimately it's still integrative. So there are a few schools of thoughts that I was taught in the process, which I think the ones that really spoke to me, and I very often, sort of draw on, for example, psychodynamic, which came from Freud's psychoanalysis, and it's probably more focused on someone's history, their past relationships, their childhood history, their developmental needs, and also attachment theories. So, for example, how your style of attachment with your primary carers when you were young, and how that's impacting you now with other relationships, especially romantic relationships. Yeah. So that's something was, I think, very central to the model. So that's something very often to the past. Then there's the humanistic movement, the humanistic model. So person-centered approach by Carl Rogers. The transactional analysis, Gestalt therapy. So I'm very into Gestalt therapy. I found it's more, compared to psychodynamic, it's more focusing on the here and now. So everything's happening in this moment. So in therapy, it might mean that it's much more relational. So the therapist might share a bit more about themselves, bring themselves in a bit more, and I think they work with embodiment a lot. So actually, Vipassana meditation becomes really useful here, because it's very often about understanding one's sensation. So if I say I'm sad, where do you feel the sadness? Is that like in your chest, or is that in your stomach? And then we can sort of try to understand what those feelings, where those feelings might be, and where that movement might take you. So you can do some actually creative experiment in the consulting room as well. So I think it's more about giving people the agency for change in the here and now, and also making people more flexible in terms of their behaviors and approaches to other relationships, to themselves. And then the transpersonal aspect. I think for me, what that means is something beyond the ego. So it's not just, very often, especially in Western society, it's very often the individualistic, individual view. But I think transpersonal sort of includes something from actually Jungian psychology as well. The archetypes, the collective unconsciousness. Archetype is something that exists in centuries. So it doesn't matter where you're from, what your religion is. We all know what hero is, what mother is, what warrior is. So there's always stories in every culture about these images, these archetypes. So I think transpersonal sometimes for me means, you can use this sometimes fairy tale, some archetypes to understand one's suffering, struggle, their life stages in that moment. Because very often in our lifetime, we might experience different archetypes at different stages of life. So one moment, maybe it's the, the mother archetype is very activated and present. Another moment, it might be the warrior. You're fighting for a cause. You're trying to stand up for yourself. So I think those are very useful sort of maps for the work. And I guess the integration means having different philosophies and lenses and models for me to draw on. Because I think, even my classmate from the same training, we will probably all work differently. And then everyone we meet is different. So there's never a prescribed sort of path for the treatment or for the therapy. So, you know, every sort of encounter is new. Every moment is new. So it's about, I guess, attend to what's happening in the moment, in that relationship with that individual. Yeah.
Perfect.